Right, let's talk about this Nissan Leaf. Right, so this Nissan Leaf then, it's about to go back. I've had it 2 years nearly. So I thought this would be a good time to start to talk about all the things I like about it, all the things I don't like about it. So this Nissan Leaf is the second generation of Nissan Leaf, so it's the one which looks slightly more subdued. It doesn't have that kind of quirky look about it, which a lot of electric cars kind of started off having this kind of quirky look about them. And you know, this has matured a little bit and it's kind of fallen into the style lines of what is the kind of Nissan style at the time. It's actually really hard to tell a Nissan Leaf from any other Nissan of a similar generation. This is the 40 kWh battery version, which gives it around 150 miles in my experience. Probably not much more than that unless you're, you know, driving it really slowly. So I think as a car, what I would say is this is a kind of short to medium range EV, and I think this is one of these cars where it's sort of that's what's going to be the deciding factor whether you buy one of these cars, as well as actually the fact that this car's now been out for a long time, so there will be a lot of these cars available. Not only can you get good deals on them new, but you can get a lot of these cars second hand now for sort of fairly reasonable EV money. EVs are still a lot more money than petrol cars, and the second hand prices are certainly not cheap, but certainly for value wise, then these cars aren't too bad. But there's reasons why you should and should not buy them, and I'll get into that as we go. So yes, this is the 40 kWh. This is the N connector version. So where at the time when we leased this car, there was 3 versions. There was the Ascenta, which was basically the bargain basement one, the N connector, and the Technica. The Technica and the N connector are very similar in specification, actually. The only real difference is the Technica came with a Pro Pilot, which is their kind of self-driving thing. This has one pedal driving, it has heated seats, it has satellite navigation, it has leatherish seats. They've got a bit of cloth in the middle, but you know, nothing to really write home about in terms of discomfort. They're absolutely fine. And I think before we get into the EV side of things, as a car goes, like all of the functions and features that you'd expect from a Nissan are there. I think it's pretty well specified, this car. I've got no complaints, and I actually really appreciate the simplicity of the kind of specification. You know, it's not kind of like having. Now, obviously, I'm now getting rid of this car, so I'm looking at my next car, and one of the things that really winds me up is the kind of endless option lists on the kind of Volkswagen and Audi and Skoda brand cars, because it's just ridiculous. And we'll get into that in future videos. But suffice it to say, you know, it's kind of like small, medium, large options on this, so it's really straightforward. And to be honest, as someone with not much time to really go through all the options and stuff, I appreciate that. You know, just kind of pick the one you want. You've got 3 choices. I'm sure you can specify options, but you know, one of those 3 choices is probably going to be the one that you want. And then in terms of second hand, it's also really helpful. Well, hello, what's going on here? It's the Rozzers. A Zoe. I always see a Zoe when I'm in the Leaf. Hello, Zoe. Every time I drive the Leaf, I see at least one Zoe. So yeah, options and stuff is fairly simple, fairly straightforward. Now, I like some things about this car, I don't like some things about this car. I think if you're thinking of buying one, then you know, it's probably worth going through the things I don't like about this car, and you can see if any of those are going to kind of hit you particularly. So the first thing I don't like about this car is, despite you still being able to buy this car brand new in 2022, as very little has changed since this one. This is a 2019 version, so even though I've had this 2 years, it's a 2019 version, and there's a whole story behind that as well. This car still comes with CHAdeMO, even if you bought it new today. CHAdeMO is the fast DC charging standard, which lost out to CCS. So as a result of that, there's going to be a lot less CHAdeMO chargers available here in Europe anyway, because CCS is the combined charge standard, which incorporates a Type 2 connector, which is your AC charging connector, and then 2 DC plugs underneath it. Now, I was talking to a guy who does a lot of mileage in EVs yesterday, and he says that since the takeover of Ecotricity by GridServe are actually putting in a lot of new charge points, but they're only putting in a few which have the CHAdeMO connectors, which is kind of confirming my thinking that if you're going to do lots of long distance driving, then this car might not be the car for you, because your CHAdeMO options are going to be greatly reduced as we go forward, as companies look to service the standard, which is, you know, ultimately CCS has won the war on the standards. So, you know, that's going to be a problem, but it's only going to be a problem if you do lots of long journeys. I've used CHAdeMO twice, and that was on the same journey since I've had this car, and okay, yeah, we've had COVID and all of that lot, but I think it really does limit the car to being a short range car because of that. The other thing that limits this car in terms of short, in fact, before I go on to the other thing I think is going to be a real lucrative, well, a semi-lucrative money spinner for someone, is actually converting these cars from CHAdeMO to a CCS option. I don't think Nissan will do it, I might be wrong, but there will definitely be a market for these cars to be being converted and have conversion kits, so that you can go from a car which has CHAdeMO to a car which has CCS. I think that would be a really interesting option to see, and I do believe there are already companies out there who are starting to offer conversions on the Leaf. So if you're prepared to go through that, if I can find it, I'll put a price for how much it costs on the video. But if you think that's a real deal breaker for you, then, you know, then it's worth thinking about. You know, what is the charging infrastructure that's going to be available to this car because of the fact that CHAdeMO lost the format war. Essentially, it's the Betamax of charging standards. So you know, you're not going to see that much coverage, and you certainly, if Tesla, for example, launched like they've done in like Norway, I think, if they open up their charging network, that's a charging network you're just not going to be able to take advantage of, because it doesn't have any CHAdeMO, and it never will. The second thing is the battery itself. I've got a video which I'll link to here where I had a hell of a time with the battery. It's a well documented, much lamented thing with the Nissan Leaf, is that actually the battery is rubbish, and I'm not going to disagree for long journeys, right? So this is all about long journeys. So if you do long journeys in this car, you're going to be pissed, because you get to a charge point, it charges really quickly, and then the second time you get to your next charge point, it doesn't charge really quickly. That's because the batteries got too hot. The batteries don't charge quickly when they're hot. They reduce the rate of charging, which is a pain, because it means you sit there for hours, or I sat there for an hour and then got fed up and went anyway. So, you know, it's it's a real pain. So if you're going on long journeys again, this car is probably not for you, because you're going to be frustrated with the length of time it takes to charge the car after you've done 1 or 2 rapid charges. Now, of course, plenty of people out there won't do any kind of journeys like that, so I think you know where I'm going with this one. Right, I'm going to park up and get some stuff, and then I'll be back. Alright, there we go. Right. So yeah, CHAdeMO charging and batteries not best for long range. And that's the bad stuff, right? That's the big bad stuff. Other bad stuff. There is, of course, other bad stuff about this car. The passenger seat seatbelt vibrates annoyingly if no one's sitting in it. It just kind of rattles. That's a bit of a pain. Another seatbelt related problem. My kids absolutely hate the seatbelts at the back. They this really chunky plastic around the actual seatbelt buckle itself, and they find it hard to put the seatbelts in, and they complain about it so much so they hate coming in this car. Other things that are bad. This particular car has been fitted with the worst tyres. Dunlops. They're terrible. These tyres are really bad. I don't know if that's a Nissan thing or whether it's because this is a lease car and they just fitted the cheapest tyres they could find. Because I've seen other Nissans and they've had okay tyres. So I don't know what the deal is with these tyres, but they are awful. I mean, in the summer like now, well, in sunny weather they're okay, but in the wet they're bloody awful. People complain about the tyres on the Zoe being Michelin somethings, and they're way better than these tyres. So if you thought the Renault Zoe's tyres were bad, you should try these tyres. They are appalling. But you can change that, of course, and if you're getting a second-hand one, then clearly tyres are going to be something that you can change. If you're buying a new one, just ask the dealer what tyres they're putting on it, because yeah, if they're putting Dunlop tyres on, ask them to change those, because they're rubbish. But these are all kind of niggly things. So yeah, there's lots of niggly things I don't like. So when you go and you have the you've got a B mode, which if you don't know about B modes in electric cars, that gives you more regeneration when you come off the throttle. It's a bit like engine braking. You have to turn B mode on every single time you get in this car, which is annoying. So when you go into drive, it will go into D, and you get no engine braking. So it's a bit like the car's running away from you when you come off the throttle, which is a bit disconcerting if you've driven any other car before. So B mode gives you that kind of engine braking effect back, but you have to switch it on every time, which means when you get in this car, you go into it and you go, oh my god, and then you turn it back on. It's not again, it's just a niggle, right? The thing is that not every electric car does the same thing. So you get into the Renault Zoe and it remembers. So when you click it into drive, if the last time you were in B mode, it will put it back into B mode. So you don't need to keep flicking the modes every time. So that's kind of another niggly annoying thing. The other niggly annoying thing, which is staring me in the face right now, is the infotainment system keeps coming up with this press OK, something you've got to read. I've never read it and I don't care, and then when you hit OK, it's hard to hit OK. It's not a very sensitive button. They have changed that. When I had this car serviced, they gave me a loaner Nissan Leaf, and I think it was like a 2020 Nissan Leaf. They have not kept that feature. So if you buy a new Nissan Leaf, or a newer than this one, maybe even if they update the software in this one, they can get that to go away, because it is really annoying and dangerous, because you have to be very precise with your presses. It's not a very sensitive button, so that's kind of crap. And I really wish they'd change that. It's got Apple CarPlay and all that kind of stuff. It's great. I don't know if it's got Android Auto because I don't have an Android, but I'm sure if you had an Android, your Android would be very happy with it. What else is niggly about this car? The headlights. Headlights are terrible. They're like candles in jam jars. It's very reminiscent of older cars without your kind of either xenon gas discharge or LED kind of headlamps. The Renault Zoe, the much better headlamp system than the new Zoe. This has still got, you know, as far as I can see, halogen type bulbs for its main beams and dipped main beams, and they're pretty terrible, to be honest. They're not very good at all. So I really don't like that. I think they should have spent a little bit more money and uplifted the headlights, because it's just kind of a safety thing when you're driving at night. It's not great. But I think again that kind of shows the age of this car versus sort of newer newer cars. So there's a few sort of niggly things there. Interior wise, okay, it's not the sexiest interior. It's got the buttons are quite chunky for the heated seats and stuff, but actually that just means you can feel them without having to look at them. I don't like these touchscreen affairs where you have to be kind of looking at what icon you're pressing on the screen. It really kind of takes your eyes off the road. If I could just feel something and go, oh yeah, that's the heated seat button, click it on, it's great. But you know, in terms of visual appeal, it's a little bit dated. Looks a little bit dated. They look like, you know, 80s kind of switches and stuff. But I'm not that bothered. Functionality wise, it's perfectly functional. And you know, this kind of goes into the positives about this car. Heated seats, heated steering wheel. Love the heated seats and steering wheel. If you've got the app, you can activate the preheat via the app. There's a whole video which I'll link to, which shows you how terrible that experience of setting that app up is. But if you get one from a dealer, make sure you get them to help you set that up before you leave. One of the things about leasing the car is I didn't have any of that experience, so I was kind of out my own. However, to get the heated seats to work with the preheat, you do have to have the buttons engaged. So I always tend to leave the heated seats on low, or flick them onto low or high when I get out of the car, so that if I do want to preheat the car the next day, at least I know the heated seats are going to come on as well. So that is sort of something to look out for. Other good things about this car: the adaptive cruise control is amazing. One bugbear I have about it is, again, it does not remember the last distance you've set. So every time you turn on the adaptive cruise control, it sets the maximum distance, which is freaking miles away. And it's, you know, you kind of wonder what the hell's going on. When the first time you use it, it's like, I've set it at 70, why am I doing 65? And it's because there's someone over the horizon doing 65, and the car's cruise control has adapted to the speed of the car in front. However, on a journey up a road or something like that, where you're just following a procession of traffic, adaptive cruise control is so amazing that I wish the other cars, you know, the Zoe and that, also had that too. And it's certainly a feature I'll look out for on the replacement for this car. Actually, there is one other thing. It's not a. Is it a bad thing, or is it? I like an engaging car to drive. I find I get enjoyment from driving cars. I don't drive them very often because we don't do that many miles. But when I do, I like to enjoy the drive. This car is neither enjoyable nor woeful. It's just boring. It's not slow, but it doesn't handle particularly well. It doesn't handle particularly badly. It's just kind of a car. It's just really dull. And I think, you know, that's probably a lot of people won't mind that, but I kind of do. I kind of want to have a little smile when I drive it. I mean, in a straight line, it's quite quick. You know, relatively quick anyway. I've surprised a lot of people at this car. But in terms of excitement and engagement, no, not really. I mean, if you want that, you need to look elsewhere. I suspect, though, if you're looking at a Nissan Leaf, that's not really high on your agenda. That's kind of going to turn some people off and not others. I think actually it might attract others. Other people want a car they don't have to fall in love with. They don't want a car that they're kind of endeared by. I think it's just personal preference, right? You're not gonna become attached to it, really. It's just a car, and it is what it is, right? It just is what it is. But for me, that's a bit of a negative. For other people, it'll be a bit of a positive. Certainly, cars that I love, I don't like to park them in car parks and things like that, because I'll be afraid they get dented and things like that. Whereas this car, I'm not really that bothered. I mean, I don't own it, so I am bothered from a lease perspective, because I'd have to put it right before I give it up. But if this was my car to own, I'd actually, I'd park this wherever I wanted, because it is just a car. So there we go. It's got all the toys. It's got a lot of toys on it. It hasn't really got the range of some cars. It hasn't got the charging features of some cars, and that kind of limits the appeal to me. I think if you're buying this car in 2022 as a second-hand car, you're going to get you're going to get a car for under 20 grand, which is, in terms of, if you looked at buying electric cars, you may even find one for even less than that. However, this 40 kWh version, I don't think you will get towards 14, 15 unless they're really high mileage. I wouldn't be put off by a high mileage electric car though, but I would be concerned about things like battery health and stuff like that, especially as this battery doesn't look after itself because of the kind of thermal management issues. So if it's been rapid charged a lot, then you might worry. If it's just been charged at home, which most of these cars will be through their lives, then again I wouldn't be too worried. But that's the thing. You are going to get a lot of these cars second hand, and I think second hand wise they're good. First hand, if you're buying this car new, I would be slightly worried about the things that I've said. Yeah, I would be concerned with some of those features, because if you're buying this car new today, you're going to have it for a few years, and who knows what's going to happen with the kWh standard. However, this is all good bargaining for yourself when you're in that dealer position, because there's some really keen alternative options now coming on from the likes of MG, who have got a very compelling offer in their EVZS. It looks like an amazing offer actually compared to this, and this is similar money to that car, what's going to clinch the deal for the dealer is basically giving you money off. So you can get loads of deals, like go on to CarWow or your favorite price comparison website for cars and stuff. You will get deals on the Nissan Leaf. I've got no question in my mind that you'll get significant discounts, because they know the technology is getting on, and that's just going to reflect in the price, right? So if these things don't bother you, but my mum goes nowhere. She drives a car. I mean, I bought the Volvo off her a few years ago. In 5 years, she did 14,000 miles. There's another Nissan Leaf. So there are plenty of people who this will suit down to the ground. They'll go to the shops and back, and they'll plug it in when they park it in their garage. They will be absolutely fine with this car, and they will never notice the kWh. The kWh will probably never get used. So there's definitely a market for this car. It's just like, you've got to know going into it what you're getting yourself into and what it can do versus what it can't do. And obviously that's where this particular car kind of fits into things. It's a real shame, because if they'd have done active battery cooling, and if they'd have flicked over to CCS, then this would be quite a strong proposition actually. If it could charge quickly, reliably, consistently, and if it had a good CCS system on here, I think this would be a different option. And I think that's what's going to happen, is the aftermarket is going to take care of that, because you can change a battery on these cars in an hour, the big battery, not the 12-volt battery. I'm talking about the traction battery underneath the car, because it sits underneath the car. You can can change these things very, very quickly. So the aftermarket will probably come in and rescue this car a little bit. So it might be a better proposition when the car's cheaper in a few years' time, because then actually adding all of the extras on makes more financial sense, whereas buying it for a lot of money and then changing it, you might as well then just put that money into buying an EV which has got all of those bells and whistles on already. Anyway, I thought I'd post that whilst I was driving around. I'm going to do some bricklaying now, which I haven't done in years. So anyway, I hope you found that useful, and we will see you in the next one, because I've got to go car shopping now to get my next EV. So we shall see how that goes. Don't scratch the car, it's going back to the lease soon. Don't put a big line down it, 'cause I would be pissed. Okay. Job's a good one.